All right, number 9 of chapter 2. It says, which of the following is true about the conditional statement? So there's 3 things, and we need to test those 3 things, okay? So if it's an if-then statement, here's if, here's then. So if P, then Q. So if blue, we'll match the colors from earlier. If yellow, then blue. So if P, then Q. If angle 1 is 30 and angle 2 is 150, then the angles are supplementary. So we want to know, is that statement true? And that is going to be true because by definition, supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So if 1 is 30, 2 is 150, if you add those up, they do add up to 180, so they're considered supplementary. So then what would be my converse? My converse is going to be if blue, then yellow. So if the angles are supplementary, then measure of angle 1 equals 30, and measure of angle 2 equals 150. So this if-then statement is implying, okay, if you know that 2 angles are supplementary, then those 2 angles have to be 30 and 150. And so that is actually going to be false. Give a counterexample. What could be a counterexample? Any 2 angles that add up to 180 that are not those, like measure of angle 1 could be equal to 50, and the measure of angle 2 could be equal to 130. They don't have to be these 2 values. And so we know that this last part is not going to be possible because the conditional statement and the converse have to be true to write a biconditional. To write a good biconditional, P then Q has to be true, and Q then P has to be true, and then we can say it both ways, P if and only if Q. And so since this one was true, but this one was false, that means that there is not a biconditional statement. Okay? All right, the Super Shot scored over 75 points in each of 10 straight games. The newspaper predicts that they will score more than 75 points tonight. Which form of reasoning is this based on? So it's not based on facts. Deductive is always going to be based on facts. Inductive is based on patterns and observations. And so that's they're making a prediction based on what's happened in the past. So patterns. So that is going to be inductive reasoning. Okay. What is the biconditional? Remember, biconditional is an if and only if statement. P if and only if Q. Biconditional form of the statement: if a white-tailed deer has antlers, then it is a male. So we can turn that into a biconditional, which of course is where you have if and only if in the middle. If and only if is here. So it's not these because these start with the word if. So it should say a white-tailed deer has no antlers if and only if it is not a male deer. So they added the word not, so that's not going to be our biconditional. We want to leave everything how it is. So like leave yellow where it's at, leave blue where it's at, and put the words if and only if in between. And so what would be our biconditional? A white-tailed deer has antlers if and only if it is a male. If this was flipped around, you could also pick that one. If it said if it is a male, then if and only if it is a male deer, if and only if a white-tailed deer has antlers, okay? So it's true forwards and backwards, so you can write it either way. All right, which is a counterexample for the biconditional. So remember when we say counterexample, a counterexample means that this statement is false, and this example disproves the statement. So an acute angle measures 80 if and only if the angle is acute. So here's what we're looking for. We are looking for an angle that measures 80 if and only if the angle is acute. We want something that contradicts that, okay? So this is not going to be a biconditional statement because it's not true forwards and backwards. So it's essentially saying if an angle measures 80, it's acute. Well, what's the flip of that? If it's acute, it measures 80. And so let's find an acute angle that does not measure 80 degrees. That would be A. This angle is acute, so I kind of want to fix this. If an angle measures 80, then the angle is acute, but the converse is not true. If acute, then 80, we want a counterexample to that. So it's going to be 60. That is the only one that is acute.